I pulled my aging Audi into the pristine, eco-friendly parking lot of the Wellness Hub, the flagship location of my sister Felicity's $10 million yoga and wellness chain. The space, all reclaimed wood and frosted glass, screamed exclusivity, and the valet looked visibly offended by my presence. I was an investment strategy consultant, not a CEO, and the difference was obvious in my practical black blazer and worn briefcase. Tonight was Jax's 16th birthday party, but to Felicity, it was a networking event, another opportunity to parade the Vance Sterling brand in front of affluent potential investors. I had just finished 48 hours straight of contract work to afford the $4,500 high-end gaming laptop I'd given Jax this morning, and the exhaustion was a cold, sharp ache behind my eyes. Felicity met me at the glass entryway, her smile wide and artificial, perfectly matching the curated calm of the setting. "Aurora. Finally," she said, her voice dropping instantly to a theatrical, concerned whisper. "We were starting to worry you wouldn't make it to your own son's party." I noticed her eyes quickly scanning my attire before dismissing me entirely, her attention already drifting back toward a group of men in bespoke suits, sipping green juice. "Jax is by the juice bar," she instructed with a practiced air of maternal warmth that felt entirely foreign on her. "But don't make a scene. Darling, we're giving a toast to the new expansion model shortly." I hurried past the indoor fountain, my gaze sweeping the room until I found Jax huddled near a wall, his shoulders slumped and his face pale beneath the flattering ambient lighting. My breath caught sharply when I saw it. His left arm was encased in a fresh white plaster cast that looked stark and wrong against his dark hoodie. "Jax, baby, what happened?" I asked, rushing toward him, my consultant focus dissolving into pure maternal panic. He flinched at my sudden movement, a raw, protective jerk that sent an instant cold spike of certainty through me. That wasn't the reflex of a boy startled. It was the guarded reaction of someone expecting a blow. Felicity materialized instantly, her perfectly manicured hand gripping Jax's right shoulder hard enough to make him wince, forcing him upright. "He's absolutely fine," she hissed, her pageant smile somehow stretching wider as she addressed me. "Just a clumsy accident at the skate park a couple of days ago. Nothing that should concern Mr. Albright from the private equity group who is watching us right now." She gave Jax a barely perceptible shake, her fingers digging in. "Stand up straight." "Jax," she ordered, her tone shifting from fake warmth to cutting demand. "He just got out of the emergency room 2 days ago. He should be home resting." I snapped, trying to step around her to reach my son, but Felicity blocked me completely. "It was just a small fracture on a trick he shouldn't have been trying," she dismissed with a wave of her free hand. "Nothing that should ruin his special day." "Right, sweetie." Jax didn't answer, his eyes fixed on the imported Italian tile floor, his good hand trembling slightly at his side. "Aurora. Marie. Is that what you're wearing?" My mother, Christine Vance, slid beside Felicity, her face a mask of disappointment framed by perfectly coiffed blonde hair. She wore the uniform of the upper-class PR world, an outfit that likely cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her eyes raked over my functional clothes. "We have people here who represent billions in assets, people who are considering funding your sister's next venture. And you show up looking like a rogue contractor." She pitched her voice low, but it held the razor-sharp edge I'd known since childhood. "Mom, he's hurt," I insisted, forcing my voice to remain level despite the surge of heat in my chest. "He needs to go home. Not stand here as part of Felicity's decor. What he needs," Felicity interjected, tightening her grip until Jax gasped faintly, "is to enjoy his party like a normal, resilient teenager instead of being coddled." Garrett Sterling, Felicity's recently retired, aggressively muscled husband, swaggered toward us from the bar, a dismissive grin splitting his face when he spotted Jax. Pathetic that you need prescription pain meds just for a little wrist break. Dude. He laughed, leaning in to whisper something into Jax's ear. I watched Jax recoil slightly, his eyes flashing to Felicity, then dropping instantly back to the floor. Then, I watched Felicity reach up to fix Jax's hair, a gesture that should have been casual, but Jax violently jerked his whole upper body away from her touch, going completely rigid, his face etched with terror. That wasn't a reflex from being startled, I noted clinically, my heart turning to ice. That was recognition. This was no skate park accident. I need to use the women's room, I heard myself say, my voice sounding distant. Mechanical. I'll be right back. Felicity's smile sharpened with cruel satisfaction. Don't take too long. Aurora. We're about to cut the cake. You wouldn't want to miss the family photo. I walked toward the back of the gym on legs that felt suddenly solid, leaving my mother mid-sentence about family image and the importance of professional appearance. I was tired of keeping the peace, and I had just realized that peace wasn't supposed to leave bruises. I didn't stop at the restroom. Instead, I walked straight to the small utility corridor near the loading bay, pulling out my phone and dialing Titus Miller's number immediately. Titus. It's Rory. I whispered into the phone, my voice low and urgent. I need you at the wellness hub in 15 minutes. Code red. Bring backup. I knew Titus, the local sheriff. Wouldn't question the code. He was the only person in this county I trusted implicitly. A man whose sense of justice hadn't been bought by Vance money. After hanging up, I quickly consulted the floor plan in my head, remembering the exact location of the security server room tucked behind Felicity's ridiculously oversized office. I located the disguised door and reached beneath the worn welcome mat, retrieving the spare key exactly where it had been since Felicity had drunkenly hidden it 5 years ago, bragging that only a true Vance knows where the real power is kept. My fingers were shaking slightly as I turned the lock, but the rest of my body felt eerily steady, fueled by the cold clarity of a strategic plan finally coming together. Inside, the small room was cool and dark, dominated by a wall of monitors displaying the venue's camera feeds. I tapped the main server screen, entering the ancient, predictable password that Felicity had never bothered to change. The security software opened, and I scrolled back through the timeline, my gaze sharp and analytical, focusing on the exterior cameras near the equipment storage. Camera 3, I murmured, my finger hovering over the footage recorded 2 days ago at 1:30 p.m. The screen flickered, showing Jax standing alone by a cluster of old gym equipment, holding his new $4,500 laptop, clearly admiring the graphics capability. Then Garrett, moving fast and sneering, stomped into the frame. I didn't need audio to understand the exchange. Garrett gestured aggressively. Jax tightened his grip on the new machine, and then Garrett lunged, tearing the laptop away. For a single, agonizing moment, I watched 6 months of my late-night shifts and missed meals with Jax shatter as Garrett slammed the computer down onto the concrete floor. Jax fell to his knees, frantically trying to collect the scattering pieces, but Garrett simply put his boot on the concrete and drove Jax backward. The impact was silent on the feed, but I instinctively recoiled, feeling the sickening crack as Jax's arm struck the heavy steel frame of a defunct weight machine. Then, the final twist of the knife. Felicity glided into the frame, her heels clicking softly on the concrete. She knelt down, her face perfectly calm, and gripped Jax's face with both hands, her manicured fingers digging into his pale cheeks. I cranked the audio on the feed, and Felicity's voice, amplified and chillingly clear, broadcast through the tiny room. If you tell anyone Garrett did this, I'll tell Grandpa you sabotaged the machine. Your mom will be fired, and you'll be homeless. Do you understand me? Jax, tears streaming down his face, his arm dangling at an impossible angle, nodded weakly, his entire body rigid with terror. My stomach churned, but I controlled the nausea, my focus purely on execution. The confirmation was all I needed. I quickly downloaded the high-resolution footage, uploading it to my secure cloud storage and simultaneously emailing it to my corporate lawyer with the subject line, "Immediate action required. Criminal assault evidence." I checked my phone, confirming Titus had responded, code red. On site in 15. I composed myself, wiping the cold sweat from my forehead, and walked back out, putting on my most apologetic expression. I found Felicity reviewing a catering invoice, still radiating self-satisfaction. "I needed to talk to you about the investors," I said, forcing a nervous tremor into my voice. Felicity arched a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, clearly expecting a breakdown. "I realize I overreacted earlier," I continued, playing the role of the chastened sister. "Jax can be dramatic, and I understand that Garrett is about to secure a major investment deal. I want to make things right." Felicity set her pen down slowly, her smug smile returning. "I'm glad you're finally seeing reason. Rory, lying about assault charges wouldn't look good for either of us." She patted my shoulder condescendingly. "Actually, to show them you're a real team player, I have the perfect opportunity for you. I need you to take the microphone and publicly apologize for the little drama. Tell them you overreacted to a simple accident." The trap was obvious, cruel, and exactly what I needed. Before I could answer, Douglas's voice cut across the room, demanding I join them in his temporary office immediately. Inside the office, surrounded by framed photos of the Vance family legacy, Douglas sat behind a massive mahogany desk, his face set in stone. The machine Garrett was working on, a custom European piece worth $20,000, he stated. Not a question, but an accusation. He broke it. That's why his arm is broken. That is not what happened, I countered, though I knew the fight was futile. Jack said Garrett pushed him. Based on what? Exactly. The ramblings of a 16-year-old on pain medication, Christine said, her voice dripping with false sympathy as she removed her reading glasses. Aurora. This company has invested thousands in Garrett's professional image. These accusations could ruin everything. Douglas leaned back, steepling his fingers. The $20,000 damage is going to be paid for. We'll dock your consultancy wages $4,000 a month for the next 5 months. Consider it a family discount. You would cut a third of my income based on a lie? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Completely serious, Douglas confirmed, his eyes cold. And Aurora, if you continue spreading these lies, we'll have to reconsider your housing situation. The farmhouse is company property. Christine nodded gently, confirming the threat. We've let you stay there at a reduced rate out of generosity. Don't jeopardize the business. They thought they had backed me into a corner, controlling me with the promise of my son's stability. I let the realization settle. They were not my family. They were an LLC. I looked at the satisfaction in their eyes, then at my phone in my pocket. Titus was 3 minutes away. Yes, I said quietly, letting my shoulders slump slightly, feigning defeat. We understand each other perfectly. Douglas nodded, satisfied, and turned back to his paperwork. Good. Now go fix your hair before the cake cutting. You look like you've been through a tornado. I turned and walked out of the office, the weight of a lifetime of resentment replaced by the cold, exhilarating anticipation of a strategist about to deploy a winning trade. I found Felicity near the DJ booth, her posture radiating triumph as she gestured toward the small stage. I forced my shoulders to curve slightly, adopting the posture of surrender I knew she expected. I'm ready to make things right, I murmured, letting my voice crack just enough. Felicity's smile widened, sharp and predatory, as she guided me toward the stage steps, believing she had successfully bullied me back into compliance. Douglas and Christine materialized instantly near the stage, their faces reflecting smug satisfaction, while Garrett stood directly in front with his phone raised high, ready to film my public humiliation. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention," Felicity announced, tapping the microphone and causing a brief squeal of feedback. "My sister, Aurora, has something she'd like to say about tonight's little misunderstanding." She stepped aside with a dramatic flourish, presenting me to the sea of investors and socialites. I gripped the microphone stand, letting my head bow slightly, taking a final, steadying breath. Through my lashes, I registered the back door. Titus Miller and 2 deputies were now standing quietly in the shadows. I was asked to apologize. I began, my voice soft, letting them lean in to hear the admission of my supposed failure. Felicity relaxed beside me, already savoring the victory. I lifted my head, meeting her gaze directly, and watched the predatory gleam in her eyes dissolve into momentary confusion as she registered the change in my expression. The tears were gone, and my posture was steel. "And I am sorry," I continued, my voice now perfectly clear, cutting through the silence of the room like glass. "I'm sorry I didn't protect my son from criminals sooner." Felicity's face went utterly blank with shock just as I heard the whir of the projector behind me. The custom lighting dimmed, and the massive screen behind the stage, which should have been displaying the Wellness Hub logo, went black. "Aurora, what are you doing?" Douglas's voice boomed from the sidelines. I ignored him. My eyes locked on the screen as the timestamp and the words "security footage," camera 3 filled the wall. The entire barn heard it, the sound of Garrett smashing Jax's $4,500 laptop on the concrete floor. The room fell into stunned silence as the crystal-clear footage showed Garrett driving Jax backward into the steel frame of the weight machine. Then came the sound that stole the air from the room, sharp and wet and undeniable, the snapping of bone. Jax's desperate scream, though muted by the camera's distance, was deafening in the context of the elegant party. Felicity appeared in the frame, kneeling by the sobbing Jax. Her voice, perfectly clear thanks to the sound system's connection, broadcast her chilling threat. "If you tell anyone Garrett did this, I'll tell Grandpa you sabotaged the machine. Your mom will be fired, and you'll be homeless. Do you understand me?" The screen went instantly black, leaving an absolute, thunderous silence in its wake. The chaos erupted a second later. Douglas was already charging the stage. "Titus," I called out, my voice ringing with finality. Titus Miller stepped out of the shadows, his face a mask of professional, uncompromising stone. "Garrett Sterling," Titus announced, his voice carrying effortlessly. "You are under arrest for felony assault on a minor and destruction of property." Garrett, dropping his phone, instantly turned purple, the shock wiping the smugness from his face. "No, that's not Dad. Tell them," he stammered, appealing to Douglas, who was wrestling with Felicity near the stage steps. "Felicity Vance Sterling, you are being detained for witness intimidation and accessory after the fact," Titus continued. As a deputy moved in and expertly cuffed Garrett, Felicity finally broke free from my father, her eyes wild with fear as she stared at me. "You can't do this. Rory, that footage is private property." "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step aside," the second deputy instructed, moving toward Felicity. The investors near the juice bar were now scrambling for the exits, fumbling for their coats and phones. Douglas's face went crimson as he realized the extent of the disaster. "Aurora, you are fired," he bellowed, his finger jabbing furiously toward me. "Get off my property right now." I reached into my blazer pocket, pulling out the folded, heavy cream-colored document stamped with the county seal. I unfolded it slowly, deliberately, letting the weight of the paper settle in the silence. "This property, Douglas," I stated, my voice steady and unwavering, "isn't yours. It's mine." I held up the land use deed, allowing the crowd, what was left of it, to see the official stamp. "You own Vance and Associates, the LLC, the business operation," I explained calmly. "But my grandmother left the land itself, every square foot, including the building the wellness hub occupies and the farmhouse where Jax and I live, to me personally." Christine made a small, choked sound, a gasp of pure realization. "And according to the commercial lease agreement you signed with my grandmother's trust years ago," I continued, flipping the document open to the highlighted clause, "any felony committed on my property by business license holders or their immediate family voids the lease immediately." I pulled the final paper from my pocket, a notice to quit, prepared and signed by me that morning. "Notice to quit," I said, setting the document precisely on Douglas's cluttered desk. "You have 48 hours to remove your business operations, your equipment, and your personnel from my land." I looked at their stunned faces, Douglas's mouth opening and closing soundlessly, Christine collapsing into a nearby chair, Felicity being led away in handcuffs, mascara streaking her perfect face. "The party's over," I concluded, turning away from the wreckage of the Vance legacy. I walked out of that building on the arm of my son, leaving the sound of Douglas's incoherent shouts echoing behind us. Titus paused just long enough to confirm that Felicity and Garrett were being processed, their frantic calls for lawyers falling on deaf ears. "They thought they could leverage your house and your job," Titus said, shaking his head slightly. "They never factored in the land use deed." I simply squeezed Jax's uninjured shoulder. The legal maneuvering was over, and the time for protecting my son had finally arrived. 18 months later, the space felt completely different, cleansed of the manufactured perfection that had defined the wellness hub. The pretentious glass and reclaimed wood were still there, but the interior had been transformed into the Jax Vance Tech and Art Incubator, a bright, functional space dedicated to teaching game design and digital art to local teenagers. I now ran the incubator, alongside maintaining my consultancy work for clients who valued strategy over social pedigree, a significant upgrade from being the rogue contractor my parents had despised. Jax, now 17, stood tall and confident near a row of high-end monitors, his arms moving freely as he coached a group of students on coding mechanics. The trauma had faded, replaced by focus and purpose. The Vance legacy, meanwhile, had imploded with brutal efficiency. Felicity and Garrett had received probation and community service, but the criminal record annihilated Garrett's nascent investment career. Douglas and Christine fought the eviction for months, but the ironclad terms of my grandmother's trust held fast, leading to the public dissolution of Vance and Associates and the forced sale of their private residence to cover legal debts. They lost everything they truly valued: their brand, their social standing, and their financial control. I was crossing the old reception area, now a vibrant gallery space for student work, when I noticed an envelope tucked discreetly under a stack of brochures. The handwriting, once familiar, was cramped and rushed, Felicity's messy scrawl. "It came this morning," Jax said quietly, noticing my expression as he walked up beside me. No return address, just the postmark. I recognized the calculated move immediately. She was trying to appeal to the family loyalty she had once weaponized against me. I picked up the envelope, feeling the thickness of the paper and the weight of the years of history contained within. "Are you going to read it?" "Mom," Jax asked, his tone curious, but completely calm. "I already know what it says," I replied, my gaze lingering on the blurred address where she had spelled out Jax's middle name incorrectly. I walked toward the communal kitchen, where a recycling bin sat beneath a notice board filled with student achievements. It will be a plea for money. A sob story about misunderstandings and family pressure, I stated, dropping the unopened letter into the bin. A final, desperate attempt to purchase my forgiveness. Jax watched me, his lips curving into a genuine, peaceful smile that reached his eyes. "You don't buy that anymore," he observed simply. "No, I don't," I confirmed, reaching for a fresh cup of coffee. The cost of my strategy, the lost sleep, the months of emotional duress, the confrontation, had been steep, but the return on investment was standing right beside me. The value of integrity is not negotiable, and my consultancy fee for rebuilding her life would be far too high for her current liquidity. The final lesson, delivered not in a boardroom but in the quiet aftermath of a full-scale corporate and familial collapse, was crystal clear. My parents and my sister believed power was held in liquidity, in prestige, in the ability to shame those who wore flannel and worked late shifts. They forgot that true power lay in the silent, binding agreement, in the small print, and in the unwavering commitment of a strategist who always read every single legal document, especially the ones they thought were irrelevant. I took a slow sip of my coffee, the heat a welcome comfort against the cold realism of the past year. They never expected the rogue contractor to be the sole legal proprietor of the ground their empire was built on. I rested my hand lightly on Jax's shoulder. He leaned into the touch, solid and unafraid. My family thought they were running a sophisticated LLC. I just executed a hostile takeover, and I won't be filing for an appeal. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it struck a chord or reminded you of your own battles, share your thoughts below. Your voice matters here. Don't forget to subscribe for more true-to-life stories of justice, strength, and redemption. Until next time, take care of your peace.